And with Ian Chappell at the end of the fourth test, Ian, England have retained the Ashes and in an emphatic style.
Very emphatic style, and also, you know, the turnaround from a thrashing in Perth to do this in Melbourne and beat Australia so comprehensively just shows you the mental strength of this England team. This has been one of many differences between this England touring party and a lot that we've seen in recent times. They've been very strong mentally, and they've been able to pick themselves up from bad situations.
It really is the planning that's gone into this series that is the most impressive thing in hindsight now. We look at the way they did all their homework for each ground and each situation. They really have left nothing to chance on this trip.
Yeah, I mean, you can go on about planning, but it's how you play that matters. And you know, an individual's preparation is important because it makes you comfortable in your own mind that you're ready to play. But you know, you don't want to underestimate the actual performance. That's the important thing. And you know, they've done the things that you should do as a touring party. You know, I mean, it makes sense to come here and try and win matches because you know that Australian state sides are going to be trying to beat the hell out of you. So I thought from the moment Andrew Strauss said that, you know, we're coming here to try and win every match, I thought that set the tour off on the right foot. And most of the things that they've done since then have been absolutely spot on.
England haven't made a great deal of what happened 4 years ago. I guess they haven't wanted to hark back. But now that the series is done and dusted, I mean, how much of an inspiration or incentive do you think 5-0 would have been for particularly the batsmen, most of whom played in that series?
I think it'd be quite a big incentive. I mean, if you look at the Australians after they lost in 2005, you know, they sat down straight away and they had a meeting in London before they even left. You know, what went wrong, what can we do better? And that resulted in, you know, the 5-0 whitewash that followed in Australia. So obviously, you know, I always felt as a player that you learned a lot more from losses than you ever learnt from wins. And I think that England have, but you can't be angry about the loss. You've got to use it as the right type of motivation, and I think that's exactly what England have done. They learnt from their mistakes when they were here 4 years ago, and they've made sure that they didn't make the same ones again. And that's what you've got to do to be a good cricket team.
And the strength and depth that they showed. I mean, we talked about Tim Bresnan yesterday. Fittingly, he took the final wicket for 4 wickets and a fine performance. But the depth that they've got in their bowling is really encouraging, not only for the going on and winning the series here, but looking ahead to future Ashes, England look in a dominant position.
Well, if you look at all the very good cricket teams, the first thing that hits you is, sure, there might be a good batsman there, there'll always be a good wicket-keeper, but the common denominator every time is strong attacks. Now, if you've got a strong attack, you can build a cricket team around that. You can generally find some batsmen who will get enough runs to keep you afloat, but it's getting those guys to take the 20 wickets. That's always the hard part. England are in a wonderful position at the moment where, you know, they've got not only a good frontline attack, they've got good backup bowlers, and you even feel, I mean, if they had to go to 2 spinners somewhere, you figure that Monty Panesar is going to do a pretty fair job in tandem with Graham Swan. So, you know, there's backup there for England. You contrast that with Australia's problems, and you know there's guys that have got to be considered to be omitted from the Australian side, but there's no certainty about who you're going to replace them with. Whereas England, you know, you get an injury to a player, an important player, and you sort of think to yourself, well, you know, there's a like-for-like replacement here. Australia can't say the same thing.
You were saying yesterday they're still a flawed team in many ways. I mean, we saw that in Perth, they couldn't win, but at the same time, do you see something in this England team that could push on from their mid-ranking at the moment and go on and challenge India and South Africa as the number 1 side?
Oh, I think, you know, I said when India made number 1 that I didn't see them as a long-term number 1 team. I don't think they've got a good enough bowling attack to do that. England have a chance to get to number 1 because they've got a good bowling attack. You know, it shows you the difference between winning and losing. I mean, if Collingwood, for instance, was in the Australian side, I mean, he'd be out of the team. You couldn't afford to carry a player who was struggling like he is. But in the England team, he's a very handy slip fielder. He can bowl you a few overs. He's in horrible batting form, but you can carry him in the England team, although I think that they did Ian Bell a disservice by batting him below Collingwood. I think they've wasted Bell's really good form. But they can carry Collingwood, who's not a total passenger because of his catching and a bit of bowling. But you couldn't afford to carry him in the Australian side. So that's the difference between winning and losing.
And further intrigue about Ricky Ponting's situation overnight. He went for a scan at hospital today. Precautionary, we presume, but speculation in the Australian papers that he will stand down at least for the Sydney game. What's your take on where he's at now that the Ashes are finally lost?
Well, you know, I've said all along that I thought that this should be the end of his Test captaincy reign. I think he should be given the opportunity to defend the World Cup as a captain. But I just hope that he makes the decision himself. I'd hate to see Ricky Ponting get pushed. You know, I'd rather see him jump than be pushed. One, I hope he makes the decision, and preferably he makes it, you know, himself. If he doesn't, I would hope that that Cricket Australia would suggest to him that, you know, it might be better if you went of your own volition rather than us having to push it. So I hope that happens. I mean, he's been terrific. I think he's probably delayed this day. I mean, this day was almost inevitable when you lose the standard of player that they lost, probably 3 years ago now, 4 years ago in some cases. But over that period, over that 2-year period, a lot of top class players lost. And, you know, there was, if you're being realistic, there was going to be doom and gloom around the corner. I think that's been delayed because of the form of Ricky Ponting and the strength of Ricky Ponting as a captain. But there comes a time for all captains. There is a use by date, and it's when it's time to move on, new players, new captain, and that time has come for Ricky Ponting. Sadly, it's come on the back end of a loss, but you know, that's the way things work in sport.
And just finally, it's only the 5th time since the Bodyline series, more than 70 years ago, that England have won an Ashes series in Australia. How does this rank compared to the ones that you've witnessed in your time?
Well, I guess where this one is different, obviously I didn't see the Bodyline one, but you didn't need to be a cricketing genius to work out that Jardine had a very good plan, you know, with Larwood and his fast bowlers. He came to Australia realising you needed good pace bowlers to win. Hutton, you know, who was 54-5, I saw that as a kid, and you know, he also realised that you needed to have good pace bowling to win. Ray Illingworth, when he had success here in Australia, same thing. He was very smart. He realised you needed good pace bowling to win. 86, 87, you know, there wasn't so much a pace attack there. That was probably, I mean, England were well led. I thought Gatting was a very good captain, and they were quite a decent all-round side, but they caught Australia at a very much a down period. This time they've done it with a more balanced attack. They had a good pace attack, but there wasn't the out and out pace, you know, the pace spearhead that you had obviously with Larwood in the Bodyline, 32-3, 54-5. You had Tyson, but you also had Statham, I think Loader. You know, there was a lot of good pace bowling there, but spearheaded by Frank Tyson's genuine pace. John Snow was the spearhead in 70-71. This has been probably more of a balanced attack with, you know, 4 guys coming at you all the time, unrelenting pressure, and that's what's done the job. And that's the way you like to see cricket matches won.